Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. You'll be glad you did. This is one for the ages. My name is Howard Zemsky. I'm proud to serve as president of Empire State Development. Let me start with some introductions. Manhattan Borough President Gail Brewer. Councilmember Corey Johnson. President of New York City Central Labor Council, Vincent Alvarez. President of the Building and Construction Trades Council of Greater New York, Gary LaBarbera. President of TWU Local 100, John Samuelson. Dude, you're popular. President of New York City District Council of Carpenters, Steve McInnes. President of New York State Iron Workers District Council, Jim Mahoney. President and CEO of DASNY, Gerard Bushell. Chairman of the MTA, Tom Prendergast. Secretary to the Governor, Bill Mulrow. All right, and I want to slip in some thanks to the team at ESD, Tom Conoscenti, Joe Chan, our Executive Vice President. Sarah, Michael, Rich, Rachel, Kay, and Liz. Thank you all, everyone who's here from ESD. Well, this is the first week of the new year, so I can still wish you all a happy and healthy new year. And thinking of New Year, it brings back memories of taking the train in to New York City on New Year's Eve from Long Island with my high school buddies. Now, that was 40 years ago, and a lot has changed in 40 years. Times Square is completely different than it was 40 years ago. New York City itself has been completely transformed over those 40 years. My hair is totally different than it was 40 years ago. In fact, the only thing I can think of that hasn't changed in 40 years is Penn Station. And I'll defer any more comment about that topic to our featured speaker. I want to say that this week, Governor Cuomo has been traveling across the state, announcing visionary initiatives that will shape New York for years and decades to come. Continued tax relief for small businesses, saving entrepreneurs over $5 billion by 2021. You can clap for that. Minimum wage hike so that people can actually support themselves and their families, and so New York can lead the nation in wage equity. Revitalization initiatives for downtowns so that we can retain and recruit millennials to all the regions of this state. Transformative investments and plans for our airports, be it LaGuardia, Kennedy, MacArthur, Republic, and Stewart. Critically important expansion and modernization of the Long Island Railroad system. A sixth round of funding for the phenomenally successful regional economic development councils a decentralized strategic approach to economic development that thankfully has left the one-size-fits-all Albany-centric model behind. There is no doubt that the economy is inextricably linked to many of our aspirations, be it for ourselves, for our families, or for our communities. Similarly, the ability of the economy to continue to grow and provide those opportunities in this new century is, of course, connected and dependent on our vital infrastructure, which brings us to today. It is my pleasure and privilege to introduce a governor who relentlessly pursues progress and prosperity for the Empire State and for all its people. Please welcome Governor Andrew Cuomo.
Thank you, very nice. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you, Howard Zemsky, who's doing a great job at ESD. But in truth, whenever Howard starts to do one of those old stories from years ago, I get a little nervous when he starts. That one ended just fine. But ESD, Empire State Development, has done really great, great work on this. And let's give Howard and the entire team a round of applause. I want to thank our partner in this effort, Amtrak, and Joe Boardman, who's here, who's the CEO of Amtrak. This is a unique partnership between the state and Amtrak. Should have happened, in my opinion, a long, long time ago, but better late than never. And it's going to do great things for the city and the state of New York. Joe Boardman, Amtrak, thank you very much for being here. James Dolan is the head of this great facility, Madison Square Garden. He wears many hats in the business and sports world, and he's been a success on many levels. Today, he is proving himself yet another success, but that he is acting as a great civic participant, a great citizen of this state, and is being cooperative with the renovations of the facility that we're going to be discussing. And he's been supportive, and he's been cordial and collegial, and we want to thank him very much for his cooperation. Mr. Jim Dolan. We are about to do the State of the State next week. The State of the State is basically a small version of the President's State of the Union. It's the agenda for the state of New York, the action plan for the state of New York. And we put it together with the budget. So we put forth one full comprehensive plan about what we plan to do with the state of New York. We were in Long Island yesterday talking about our Long Island plan. And the front page of Newsday today said, think big, think big. And it was summing up what we were proposing for Long Island, but I think in many ways it sums up the entire message of the state this year. Think big. We are facing big problems in New York State. We are facing big problems as a country. We have big international problems. We have big domestic problems. We have problems with terrorism. We have environmental issues. We have economic issues. Economic injustice issues. These are all big issues. We have a homeless problem here in the city of New York. Big problems require big solutions. And if you bring a small solution to a big problem, by definition, you're going to fail. And when you think about New York and what made New York, New York, it was thinking big. Nobody who thinks small came to New York. I don't want to say where they did go, but they didn't come to New York. New York was made by people who thought big and dreamed big and acted big and wouldn't take no for an answer. And in that spirit, we're going to talk about this project today. Before I begin, I would like to thank my colleagues from Albany who came down to hear this. It's their district. We have Senator Adriano Espaillat, and I'd ask him to stand. Senator Brad Hoylman, and Assemblyman Dick Gottfried. The theme of the State of the State this year is going to be Built to Lead. And it starts with the point that New York did not just happen. This is not a city that evolved from the geographic circumstances. New Yorkers made New York what it is, and it made it the greatest state in the nation. Our founding fathers were ambitious. They shaped, they designed, they constructed, and they made New York the great state that it is today. It is a built environment. You take an island made of rock, a couple of miles wide, and you made it the greatest city and the greatest state on the planet. It's really an amazing, amazing accomplishment. And it was about ambition, and it was about arrogance, and it was about chutzpah, except I don't know they said chutzpah back then. But we dreamed big and we built big. 60-mile aqueduct to bring fresh water to New York City. Who could have imagined that you could have done that? Miles and miles of underground subway system carved through rock. Who could have imagined that you could have done that? One bridge longer than the next, always tempting fate, tempting the odds. We can do it, we can do it. Long Island, what Robert Moses did, opening up Long Island. Governor Nelson Rockefeller was a bold builder. He did the World Trade Centers. He did the SUNY University system all across upstate New York. Greatest project we forget in downstate New York. But it was the Erie Canal. Just imagine the Erie Canal, 1817. Governor DeWitt Clinton came up with the idea that was going to make this state the greatest state in the nation. At that time, the challenge was who could access the West. The West was really what we would call now the Midwest. But what state would access the West? Virginia, with Jefferson and Washington, were trying to make Washington the port by accessing the West, and they were going to do the C&O canals. Governor of New York, Clinton, said, I have an idea. We'll make New York the great port. Ships will come in New York City. They'll go up the Hudson River. They'll get to Albany. They make a left. They come out in Buffalo. And you're in the Great Lakes. And once you're in the Great Lakes, you can come down the Ohio River, et cetera. And someone said, Governor, one question. When the ships make the left at Albany, how do they get out through Buffalo? He said, oh, no problem. We'll dig a canal. 524 miles. 1817. No hydraulics. Men, women, animals, and shovels. And they built the Erie Canal on time, on budget, 1817, 1824. Now New York became the great port because of that engineering marvel and that daring. So wild an idea that when he proposed it, they sought to impeach him on grounds that he was crazy to propose such an idea. And that is New York, right? That kind of vision, that kind of creativity. We have to get back to that energy and that ambition and that capacity. New York's success for the next 100 years depends on what we do and what we plan today. New York's tomorrow depends on what we actually do today. This year's State of the State, we will propose the biggest construction program in our state's history, period. We are going to build new air terminals, new rail terminals, invest heavily in mass transit because that's where our future is, and invest in roads and bridges. For upstate New York, we're proposing an unprecedented $22 billion in roads and bridges to rebuild the upstate infrastructure and $30 million to rebuild the public transportation in upstate New York. Here we have the most ambitious, aggressive modernization plan of the MTA in history. $26 billion, because if this region's going to grow, it's going to grow through mass transit. And that's going to be the MTA, overhauling dozens of subway stations and adding 1,400 new subway cars and 3,100 new buses, all with the state-of-the-art new technology transforming the MTA system. We're going to invest $2.3 billion in the Metro North that goes up to the Hudson Valley. And we're going to be adding new stops in the Bronx. Bronx has been lagging in terms of growth and economic development in the city of New York. One of the reasons is the Bronx is not as accessible. We're going to be putting in 4 Metro North stations in the Bronx. On Long Island, we're going to be adding a 3rd track to the Long Island Railroad. Long Island has a terrible congestion problem. It has one of the worst commutes in the United States of America. The answer for Long Island is not build more roads. We have to get people out of the cars, and we have to get them into mass transit, which means the LIRR has to be faster. It has to be more comfortable, which means the LIRR needs another track, and we're going to build that track. It goes from Floral Park to Hicksville. It's a $1.2 billion project. The Long Island Railroad will bring people to Grand Central Terminal when we finish the East Side Access program, which is underway now. And we're building the Gateway Tunnel. Gateway Tunnel will connect New York and New Jersey as a rail tunnel for Amtrak and trains coming from the west. It's going to be the first new rail tunnel built in over 100 years. And it is desperately needed because we only have 2 tunnels now that desperately need repair. We're also going to modernize our gateways to the world, our airports. More and more commerce is going to be coming from air travel. We're going to be building a new airport at LaGuardia, long overdue. We announced this with the Vice President, who had that great pithy quote. You know, the Vice President can sometimes be just a tad too candid. He had that great line about LaGuardia. If you were blindfolded and you didn't know where you landed, you would think you're in some third world country. He was right. LaGuardia was long overdue in being reconstructed, and we're going to build a new airport, not just rebuild what was. This is going to be an entirely new state-of-the-art airport, first new airport in this country in over 30 years. So that's going to be exciting. It's going to go from substandard to world class. We're going to connect LaGuardia to the LIRR by an air train. So you'll have a 1-seat ride to LaGuardia, which is also long overdue. First time ever, you'll be able to go from Penn to LaGuardia. JFK, we're doing a revisioning plan now to take that maze of terminals and make it into one comprehensive airport. On Long Island, we're redeveloping the Republic Airport with tax-free sites. We're trying to get some of the traffic out of LaGuardia and out of Kennedy to the smaller regional airports, so we reduce traffic and we reduce air traffic at the 2 main airports. Long Island also has MacArthur Airport, which is physically, it's a world-class airport. International flights can't land there now because there's no customs house. There's no customs clearance. We're going to build a customs inspection station. We're working with TSA so international flights can land on Long Island, take more traffic from our airports, and keep people from having to make the commute. Stewart Airport in the Hudson Valley, the same thing. We're marketing over 270 acres of industrial and commercial properties to take air traffic to the Hudson Valley and create an economic generator there. All of this activity are not just individual projects. They're all planned together. They are an integrated transportation system, and most of them come back to Penn Station as the nexus in Long Island, in Manhattan. The Long Island Railroad trains coming to Penn Station, LaGuardia to Penn, Metro North to Penn, the additions to Metro North coming to Penn. The Gateway Tunnel from New Jersey will bring more volume from the west. So we have more volume from the west, more volume from the east, all coming into Penn. Penn then accesses a totally redeveloped MTA. We estimate that with these changes and the growth in the region, there will be a doubling of the traffic into Penn over the next 15 to 20 years. That then takes us to Penn. Penn was a majestic building, opened in 1910. In true New York fashion, it was one of the largest, most grand buildings ever constructed at the time. It was a triumphant entrance to New York because that was New York at its best, right? It was New Yorkers saying, when we put our face forward, we put out our welcome mat, we put out the best because we are the best. After World War II, Penn Railroad demolished the above-ground station. Today, Penn, which is owned by Amtrak, is the most traveled hub in the hemisphere at 650,000 people per day. Just think about that, coming through Penn. Penn Station is un-New York. It is dark. It is constrained. It is ugly. It is dated architecture. It is a lost opportunity. Travelers are relegated to a bleak warren of corridors. Frankly, it's a miserable experience, to cut to the chase. And to really cut to the chase, it is a terrible impression of New York. Imagine being a first-time visitor to New York and getting off in Penn Station. Good thing the vice president flew and didn't take a train. If that's what he said about LaGuardia, imagine what he would have said about Penn. I'm happy for Amtrak. And what is amazing is how long it has been tolerated. It's not like Penn was a secret. It has gone on for decade after decade after decade, like LaGuardia, frankly. Senator Daniel Patrick Moynihan, who is one of New York's greats, and I had the honor of working with him, was a shoeshine boy in Penn. He remembered the old days. He was embarrassed by what Penn had become, and he was one of the first voices to speak up about an alternative to Penn. And he talked about taking the Farley Post Office, which was across the street from Penn, and making the Farley Post Office the train station so that, and transferring the assets from Penn. Farley sits right across the street from the Penn Station site. Farley is a full block. Penn and Madison Square Garden are a full block. Madison Square Garden sits right above Penn Station. So one of the design challenges for Penn is how do you get light down into Penn and open Penn with Madison Square Garden above. There was a proposal at a time to move Madison Square Garden over to the Farley Post Office. That was short-lived, and that didn't happen. Today we have an opportunity. I would say no, even more, we have an obligation to dream big just like our founding fathers, and then to do it, right? Government is not an act of rhetoric. Government is not a soapbox. Government is a vehicle of results and action. That's what the plan is supposed to be. We have three components to the vision. Number one, redevelop Penn Station, because it has to be redeveloped. Number two, build a new train hall ringed by shops and restaurants at Farley. Number three, link the two structures into one integrated, comprehensive complex through underground concourses that go from Farley to Penn. First, we begin by forming a joint entity between the Empire State Development Corporation, Amtrak, MTA, and Long Island Railroad, which we have done. The redevelopment of Penn Station will commence this week. We're not going to waste any time. We're going to do a joint solicitation, RFP, RFEI, for people who like acronyms, by Empire State, Amtrak, and the MTA for the redevelopment of Penn by a private sector developer. We have had great success with construction projects, government construction projects, when we enter into design-build contracts with a private developer. We're doing the Tappan Zee Bridge right now, a $4 billion project, a project government wouldn't go near. They talked about for 20 years. We grabbed hold of it. We're doing it. We're doing it on time, and we're doing it on budget with a design build to a private sector developer, and we're talking about the same thing here. The private developer will finance the Penn redevelopment in exchange for the retail development rights that are within the station itself. Again, there are 650,000 people going through Penn, so there is a tremendous commercial opportunity. Our solicitation will be flexible, offer several design options for redeveloping Penn. The design options will include this. First, a friendly negotiated condemnation, which is an unusual combination of words, but it is an unusual situation. A friendly negotiated condemnation and removal of the MSG Theater, which will create the opportunity to construct an 8th Avenue grand entrance with concourse retail and commercial space. Right now, you can't build a full entrance on the 8th Avenue side because the Madison Square Garden Theater is there. If a developer is interested in this option, we would work with Mr. Dolan, come up with an amicable resolution to acquire the theater, demolish the theater, and then open up the 8th Avenue side. This is an exciting option because you would have a block-long entrance to Penn. It would be right across the street from that beautiful post office entrance with the columns, and it would also allow light into Penn Station, retail opportunities, commercial opportunities. That's option A. Option, and this is a picture of what visualization of what the 8th Avenue side could look like. But you see the grandeur of what this opening could be. Second option is closing 33rd Street and using skylights and a new entrance to bring natural light to the concourse below. Third, and this is a visualization of the 33rd Street entrance side, and another one. Third option, open the site through new entrances at the corners and mid-block of Madison Square Garden and Penn. So you take the 4 corner entrances and you take the mid-block entrance and you open them up. Again, common theme is access, light, air into Penn Station. Next option is create 7th Avenue as the grand entrance. You now have an entrance to Penn on 7th Avenue, as well as the Penn commercial buildings, as well as Madison Square Garden. But there's an option to open up the 7th Avenue side, make that a grand entrance, and again, bringing more space, more light to Penn. Last option is really no exterior major renovations, but renovating the inside of Penn, so you'd have better navigation within Penn, wider concourses in Penn, a better passenger experience, better retail shops in Penn, which would generate additional income, which would make the project financially viable for an outside developer. Simultaneously, we'd be redeveloping the Farley Post Office, which is right across the street. That will have a state-of-the-art train hall in the Farley building. It'll have more concourse space, more circulation space, escalators, elevators, a fantastic architectural, iconic design that will really be an architecturally significant building within New York, but yet energy efficient. The train hall will also include retail modern space, modern amenities, Wi-Fi, digital ticketing, etc. The 2 complexes then get joined by underground complexes, and when you put the 2 together, they will double the capacity if not triple the capacity of the current station, making one complex, which we call the Empire State Station. So in summary, our plan calls for a joint RFP-RFEI, maximum flexibility for private sector developers. Our options include a private sector partner who could come in just to develop Farley, a private partner to redevelop Penn alone, a private partner to do both, or a private sector consortium that comes together to develop the entire complex. The RFP-RFEI will go out this week. The response date will be 90 days. We don't expect at the end of 90 days to be able to consummate a transaction, but we will have plans that will give us a sense of how we want to proceed from there and narrow down the discussion to a couple of serious bidders. This has been a long time coming, and it was a tremendous undertaking. Amtrak is a member of the federal government. State government is ESD. It's, in theory, the federal and the state government should always work well together. That's in theory. In practice, it actually worked here. And I want to thank Amtrak President Joe Boardman. I also want to thank Tony Kosher for his help. The ESD, as I mentioned, did a great job with Howard Zemsky. The MTA chairman, Tom Prendergast. Senator Charles Schumer was extraordinarily helpful in making sure the Gateway Tunnel project worked and in facilitating the relationship that we have with Amtrak. Empire State Station is going to be part of an overall statewide transportation development plan. Again, $22 billion in upstate roads and bridges, largest investment in the state's history in upstate roads and bridges. Investment in Stewart Airport, Metro North in the Hudson Valley. We're underway building the Tappan Zee Bridge, which is going to be a spectacular, both from an architectural point of view as well as a transportation point of view. The Bronx Metro North stations, MacArthur Airport that can take international travel, Republic Airport, Long Island Railroad expansion, LaGuardia Airport, which we believe will break ground this year, believe it or not, East Side Access, which is an ongoing MTA project, revisioning of JFK, MTA's $26 billion renovation, the Gateway Tunnel from New Jersey, and at the heart of it, a new Penn and a new Farley, a new Empire State Station. Penn Station has more passenger traffic than Kennedy, LaGuardia, and Newark airports combined, believe it or not. That's how important this transportation hub is. I believe it is going to be transformative for the state. It's going to be the heart of an entirely new transit system. It's going to have this state moving towards mass transit in a way it hasn't moved in decades. Transportation, as we know, is the circulatory system for the economy. It's what made this state 100 years ago. It's what's going to make this state for the next 100 years. What happens tomorrow depends on what we do today. Let's be as bold, as ambitious as our forefathers were before us. It's what made this state the greatest state in this country, the greatest state on this planet. And if we remember how we got here, we can build a New York that's better than ever was. This is a beginning to do just that. Thank you, and God bless you.
Thank you, Governor. The governor talked about the important partnership between ESD and Amtrak and Madison Square Garden. Joe, I'm not sure how you drew the short straw to have to follow the governor, but you did. So it's my pleasure and privilege to introduce the president and CEO of Amtrak, Mr. Joe Boardman.
Thank you, Howard. You know, Governor, I was hoping you weren't going to get, as you got down to describing Penn Station, the miserable part. I thought, what the heck's going to be next for the CEO? But here I am. Look, Amtrak appreciates Governor Cuomo's leadership, his vision, and his commitment to the expansion of passenger rail here in New York, period. We're proud to work with the governor and Howard, as he was introduced to me by the governor a few minutes ago, at ESDC, and the others on the team. This is going to be a rail renaissance here in Manhattan, with the development of the Farley Station, or the Farley building, into a train hall, to pursue Penn Station in the way that the improvements for hundreds of thousands of daily commuters, as has already been described, 650,000 was up on the slide. We're setting the stage here for the future expansion of rail service and ridership that'll make possible this gateway program as discussed. An improved Penn Station, a new train hall at the Farley building, benefit both passengers and lay the groundwork for increased train capacity by creating more passenger space and a far better passenger experience, and that's what it's really about, the passenger. These early action items are necessary first steps to prepare Penn Station for the growth that'll come from a new tunnel under the Hudson River and the development of Penn South as part of a new station. Amtrak is excited to engage with the development community in this request for proposal for the existing Penn Station, and will look to draw upon their creative expertise in developing the concepts to improve the facility, and the governor laid them out well, I think. We'll challenge them to think big, as he's already talked about, on a scale befitting the busiest rail station in North America, no, in the Western Hemisphere, right, Governor? At the epicenter of one of the most complex railroads actually in the world, the Northeast Corridor. On behalf of the 20,000 women and men of America's railroad, Amtrak, I'm proud to stand with Governor Cuomo and our partners here in New York, and working together to move this project and the broader Gateway program forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Joe. Mr. Dolan, first of all, thank you for your hospitality hosting us today. What was the term? Friendly, negotiated, condemnation? That was good, the first ever. It's great to have your partnership, and having worked with you on this for some time now. You own all of my best sports memories, I have to say, and many others here. So it's a pleasure to introduce our partner in this process, Mr. James Dolan.
Thank you very much. It's actually not very often that I get applauded in this building. Part of the foibles of sport team ownership is you do not get applauded. It's a pleasure to be here today with all of you and with the governor as he makes this groundbreaking announcement. For so many decades across the country and throughout our state, we saw infrastructure project after infrastructure project stall or die. But since taking office, Governor Cuomo has proven that when he sets out to accomplish something, it gets done. Just yesterday, the governor unveiled a plan to move forward on a long overdue expansion of the Long Island Railroad with additional trains that will enter into the plaza we are standing in today. Now, first, I am a businessman, but I am also a New Yorker and firmly believe that this project is good for New York. And as it advances, if there's an opportunity to partner with the state I will gladly take it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you all again for attending today. I hope you agree this is one for the ages, a remarkable infrastructure project, the governor's vision worthy of the Empire State and all that we have been and all that we know we can be going forward. Thank you very much. Thank you to our partners at Amtrak. Thank you, Mr. Dolan, Madison Square Garden. Thank you all very much for attending.